Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I hope you all are doing well. This is Sunday, February the 15th of 2026. The time right now is 3:49 p.m., so afternoon. It's going to be evening very soon. 3:49 p.m. I'm starting this live stream on a Sunday, not my usual time. And I want to ask you a question. You know that this channel is about social and political issues, both domestic and international. We discuss a wide range of social and political issues, domestic and international. We talk about Ukraine, Russia. If you think about international topics, Ukraine, Russia, we talk about the Indo-Pacific. We've talked about US relationship with Canada. We've talked about Venezuela. We've talked about the Middle East issues, right? My friends, I want to ask you, and I want your response. Let me know in the live chat. Do you think that we should talk about Cuba? It's whatever you want. Do you think we should talk about Cuba? Should we discuss topics pertaining to Cuba? I see one like. The first person to send a like, probably that's a seal of approval. Probably that means Tassif, go right ahead, talk about Cuba. Unless others want to join and share their thoughts as well, I am leaning towards moving forward with this discussion about Cuba. My friends, I would like to talk about Cuba. We discussed issues surrounding Venezuela in the past, in the recent past. I've talked about Venezuela a lot, and there's going to be more to talk about in the future about Venezuela. So that topic is open still. Discussion regarding Venezuela has not ended. There's going to be a lot more to discuss in the near future. But right now, my friends, right now, I'm going to be talking about Cuba. First of all, where is Cuba located on the world map? It's very, very close to the United States of America. Cuba is very close to the US. Can anyone tell me how close? Go right ahead. Share your thoughts in the live chat, my friends. The live chat is open. Share your answers, ask questions, share your thoughts and comments. Cuba is an island. It's a very large island, actually. It's an island. It's a country located in a very pleasant part of the world. The weather in that part of the world is very beautiful where Cuba is. The part of the world where Cuba is located is blessed with amazing weather. Warm sunshine, beautiful water, full of life. I mean, if you like Florida, and I know we have friends who are from Florida, who live in Florida, who tune in for these live streams, who watch my videos, who listen to my podcast episodes. So if you live in Florida, if you love Florida, if you love visiting Florida, if you love the Florida weather and the sunshine and the beautiful water and everything, Cuba, some might say that Cuba has much better weather than Florida. I mean, obviously, different people will come up with different opinions on this. But some might say, hey, you know, Florida is amazing, but Cuba has better weather. Nicer weather. Yeah, perhaps. And when you talk about Cuba, you know, we're talking about the land, the island, but in terms of the population, how many people live in Cuba? What's the population? I'm not sure that there's a solid estimate, to be honest with you. I think, you know, I've seen that the range is somewhere between 10 and 11 million people. Could be 10, could be 11, could be a little more than 11. I don't know. I don't think there's very thorough census. I don't think there's very thorough study to make an estimate, you know. So let's just assume, for the purpose of this discussion, 11 million. So Cuba has 11 million people, located not far from the United States. Okay, it's about 94 miles from Key West, Florida. That's right. That's how close Cuba is geographically. That's how close Cuba is. So approximately 94 miles from Key West, Florida. Beautiful island, beautiful weather, approximately 11 million people. But the island has a dark side. There's an authoritarian regime that rules Cuba. The authoritarian regime does not allow democracy to flourish. The authoritarian regime in Cuba suppresses the will of the people. My friends, did you know that in Cuba there's a one-party system? That's right. A one-party system. It means there's no choice. For the people of Cuba, there is no choice. Like here in the United States, we have choice. We can look at the different political parties. We can look at the different candidates. State elections, federal elections, local races. We can look at the choices on the ballot. We can learn more about the candidates, their views, their ideas, their policies, what they would like to do, their plans. If elected, we can look at their records. We can learn more about the political candidates before voting for them. We can find out their past history, their success. What background do they come from? Have they always worked in government? Do they come from the private sector? Is there a record of professional experience in the nonprofit sector? Is there a history of military service? We can learn about the candidates. We can decide which candidate is right for which office, and that's how we vote. We can look at the different political parties and understand the differences. Understand the vision of the different parties, and we can choose accordingly. But in Cuba, my friends, in Cuba, it's a one-party system. One-party system, it means there's no choice. You can't choose. The people of Cuba do not get to choose from a list of political parties. The people of Cuba are stuck with one party only, and that is the Communist Party. There is no free and fair election in Cuba. There is no way for the people of Cuba to voice their political opinions. Freedom has been suppressed. Choice has been eliminated in Cuba. There is no choice. The people of Cuba are forced to tolerate the Communist Party. Single party rule. Cuba, an authoritarian state. If you read the reports from the United States Department of State regarding Cuba, you will find a lot of information about human rights violations that take place in that country, that take place on that island. Arbitrary arrest, detention, extrajudicial killings, violation of privacy, restrictions on media freedom, censorship. And the list goes on and on and on. Life in Cuba is extremely difficult. We're talking about a population of approximately 11 million people living under the rule of an authoritarian regime. The population of Cuba enjoying no freedom. The population of Cuba suffering under Communist Party rule. Think about all the people who live in Cuba, the innocent people. Think about the innocent people. I'm not talking about the Communist Party commanders. I'm not talking about the people who control what happens in government in Cuba. I'm not talking about the communist rulers there. I'm talking about the general people. Think about a senior citizen living in Cuba. A senior citizen who spent his or her entire life living under authoritarian rule. A senior citizen who has suffered, who has worked hard but really has not been able to achieve anything, has not been able to achieve freedom. Why? Because of the authoritarian regime in Cuba. Think about somebody from the working population, maybe, a 40-year-old man, a 50-year-old man, working hard, trying to put food on the table, trying to make ends meet, trying to move from one day to the next, but really cannot see a bright future. It's all about just going from one day to the next, surviving. It's just about surviving, having food, surviving, ensuring roof over one's head. That's it. But there's no real prospect of a bright future because the country is suffering each and every day because of an authoritarian regime. So people simply survive. There's no real fertile ground for true prosperity. There's no real fertile ground for achieving success through creative pursuits. No. It's just going from one day to the next. My friends, share your thoughts with me. Share your thoughts with me. I want to hear from you. There's somebody who's mentioning that, oh, your family escaped communist Cuba, so you know firsthand. So share your thoughts. Share your thoughts. There are people who live in the US or maybe in other parts of the world who have family members in Cuba. Maybe cousins, maybe grandparents in Cuba, still living in Cuba. There are many Americans who have family members in Cuba. They're originally from Cuba. And those Americans, they can tell you, they can share with you their pain when they think about their family members who are still in Cuba, stuck with no real future. It's just living one day to the next, but no real prospect of growth or prosperity. So people are suffering. Now, why am I talking about Cuba today? Why am I talking about Cuba? Out of all the big domestic and international issues that are going on right now, why have I chosen to talk about Cuba? Because it is important. We need to talk about Cuba because of our own national security, my friends. The regime in Cuba is not friendly to the United States. The regime in Cuba is not friendly to its own people. And so, yeah, the regime in Cuba is not friendly to the US either. It's not a friendly regime. It's an authoritarian regime, brutal regime in Cuba. And I think most of you understand this already, that Cuba is not a US ally. The US cannot have an ally like Cuba under the current rule, communist rule. There are big challenges because Cuba is located extremely close to the United States. Like I said, 94 miles south of Key West, Florida. That's how close Cuba is on the world map. And sadly, Cuba poses threats to the US. Cuba is being run by a regime that does not like the US. And I was looking at the international travel advisories on the State Department's website, and for Cuba, there's now a level 2 advisory, which means exercise increased caution. Exercise increased caution in Cuba due to crime and unreliable electrical power. Petty crime is a risk for travelers in Cuba. This includes pickpocketing, purse snatchings, and car break-ins. Violent crime, including armed robbery and homicide, is also on the rise in Cuba. And it says, U.S. law and regulation prohibit travel to, from, or within Cuba for tourist activities. And you can read more details on the State Department's website. My friends, there's one point that I'm going to mention here. Give me a second. Hold on. Give me a second. 1 second here. My friends, did you know that Nicolas Maduro had Cuban bodyguards? Did you know that? I'm not sure if we talked about that on this channel, but Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro had Cuban bodyguards. Now, why in the world would Venezuela's leader, not leader anymore, Maduro is an inmate, all right? Maduro is in jail, for those who didn't know. Maduro is in jail in the US, but when he was the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, why in the world did he have Cuban bodyguards? Oh, this Venezuela-Cuba friendship between two authoritarian regimes. This friendship, can it last forever? I don't think so. Is the United States going to take action against Cuba? There are many who say that US action is necessary. You know what? US is already taking action. Maybe it's not the kind of action that we saw in the case of Venezuela. Not yet, at least. But the US is taking action. President Trump's decisions regarding Venezuela have been excellent so far. President Trump's decisions regarding Venezuela, all those decisions have been excellent so far. And people are hopeful that our Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump will take action regarding Cuba as well. There are many people out there, many who are watching right now, I know this, who would like to see the US take action regarding Cuba. And by action, I mean strong action, decisive action. The regime in power in Cuba is not a friend of the US, not even close. The current leader in Cuba, not a Castro, not Fidel Castro, not Raul Castro, not any other Castro. In case, you were thinking, oh, it's a Castro. Which Castro is it? Is it Fidel? Is it Raul? No, no, no. There's no Castro in charge of Cuba right now, which may come to some people as a shock. When they hear Cuba, they think Castro. Oh, it's got to be Castro. Who's the next in line? Which next Castro is in line? Well, the current leader of Cuba is not a Castro. It's Miguel Diaz-Canel, all right? I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Miguel Diaz-Canel. He's the head of the Communist Party. He's the president of Cuba. Now, this leader, the so-called leader, Miguel Diaz-Canel, do you think that this leader really represents the will of the people of Cuba? Do you think that the people of Cuba are very happy with the way the country is being run? Do you think that the so-called president of Cuba is focused on doing what the people of the country want? I'm going to let you answer. I'm going to let you answer. Cuba is in a lot of trouble. And now Cuba has seen what the United States can do and what the United States has done in Venezuela. The Cuban leadership has seen that. And Miguel Diaz-Canel must be very nervous right now. Miguel Diaz-Canel, the leader of Cuba, failing. He is failing. His regime is failing pretty miserably. If you have not been paying attention, you better start paying attention now, because there's going to be more and more updates in the hours, in the days, in the weeks ahead regarding Cuba. Because the US is taking strong action. My friends, thanks for being here for this discussion. I have more to talk about, but I also want to highlight that I always welcome your thoughts and comments. My friends, it was last month when President Donald J. Trump signed an executive order to address threats to the United States by the government of Cuba. And President Trump wrote in that executive order, he wrote that as President of the United States, I have an imperative duty to protect the national security and foreign policy of this country. I find that the policies, practices, and actions of the government of Cuba constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat which has its source in whole or substantial part outside the United States to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Now, I'm not going to read the entire executive order. It's available online. It's on the White House website. You can go and look it up, and you can read the entire order word by word by word. You can read it multiple times, and you can you can understand the significance of this executive order, but I'm not going to read the whole document here on this channel. It's a public document, which I encourage you all to read. But I will tell you this, the Cuban regime has engaged in activities that go against the United States. And so President Trump is taking action. President Trump is taking action. President Trump's executive order says the United States will act to protect the foreign policy, national security, and national interests of the United States, including by holding the Cuban regime accountable for its malign actions and relationships, while also remaining committed to supporting the Cuban people's aspirations for a free and democratic society. These are words from President Trump's executive order. You have to understand that while President Trump is taking action against the Cuban regime, he is also creating a pathway for the innocent civilians of Cuba to head towards a brighter future. If the authoritarian regime in Cuba collapses, then the people of Cuba can rise up and they can secure a better future for themselves. They can take their country, Cuba, towards a prosperous future once the authoritarian regime collapses. So President Trump has announced that the administration will impose tariffs on goods from any country that directly or indirectly sells or otherwise provides any oil to Cuba. Bold decision. I love it. This is also going to put pressure on Russia because we know that Russia and Cuba are friends. They're buddies, Russia and Cuba. You got an authoritarian regime in Russia, you got an authoritarian regime in Cuba, and they're friends. So when President Trump announced that his administration will impose tariffs on goods from any country that directly or indirectly sells or otherwise provides oil to Cuba, this is going to put tremendous pressure on Russia. So what is happening right now as we speak? Cuba is running out of oil. That's right. That's right. I know some of you are saying, did we just hear that? Did we hear it correctly? Did Tausif just say that Cuba is running out of oil? Or are we dreaming? Maybe it's not what we heard. Maybe we heard something else. No. You heard it correctly. Cuba is running out of oil. That's right. Cuba is running out of oil. And what happens when there's no oil in Cuba? The regime of the communists, the regime of Miguel Diaz-Canel will collapse once the country runs out of oil. The authoritarian regime will collapse. And once that happens, the people of Cuba can hope for, they can expect a better future. The people of Cuba can expect democracy to grow and flourish and thrive in Cuba once the authoritarian regime falls apart. My friends, do you agree with what I said? Do you have different viewpoints? Do you have a different way of doing analysis? Are there things that you want to mention that I missed? Share your thoughts with me. My friends, do you understand that if the authoritarian regime in Cuba falls, if a democratic society is established in Cuba, do you understand that it's going to make the world a better place? It's not just going to be good for the people of Cuba, it's going to be good for the whole world. With the fall of an authoritarian regime and with the rise of democracy, the world is going to be a better place. And so the eyes of the world are now on Cuba. And there are so many Americans who originally came from Cuba, or their parents or grandparents came from Cuba. They have family members in Cuba, even to this day. Americans who live in the US, Americans of Cuban origin who have family members in Cuba, and those family members are suffering because of the authoritarian regime. And there are many Americans of Cuban origin who are now hoping and praying for the Trump administration's success. They're hoping and praying to see the fall of the authoritarian regime in Cuba. They're hoping and praying to see the rise of democracy in Cuba. All right? At the end of the day, it's about humanity. It's about humanity. Human beings, they should be able to enjoy freedom. Freedom of speech. Freedom to express their thoughts and their views. Religious freedom. Human beings should never be deprived. They should enjoy God-given freedom. But because of authoritarian regimes, innocent people, they cannot enjoy freedom. Their freedoms get snatched away by brutal dictators. And so in Cuba, this is a very critical moment. This is a very critical moment right now, because there's a possibility that the people of Cuba may head towards a brighter future to enjoy their freedom. Cuba is running out of oil. Over the next few hours, few days, few weeks, something's going to happen. What happens? A country cannot survive economically without oil. The economy is going to come to a standstill if Cuba runs out of oil, and that is exactly what is happening right now. And that regime may fall apart, and the people of Cuba will rise up to establish democracy. Do you agree with me, my friends? Let me know in the live chat whether you do or you don't. I would appreciate hearing from you. I'm seeing yes. I'm seeing agree. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Someone wrote, I do, amen, free Cuba. Exactly. Michael saying yes. Is that Michael from Alabama? Michael? Is that Michael from Alabama? I don't know. I feel like I haven't seen that name pop up in a while. Is it the same Michael or a different Michael? Oh, that's Michael from Alabama. That's so great. It's been a while since I've seen your name pop up. Thanks for being here, Michael. Thanks for being here. Thanks for staying connected. All right, my friends. Yeah, I'm going to wrap up this live stream, but I'm going to be back. I'll try to do one more live stream tonight if I can, or maybe in the early hours of Monday. So stay connected to my channel. I would appreciate that very, very much. This live stream so far has been 35 minutes long. I think I'm going to wrap it up in the next couple minutes. So thank you so much for being here, my friends. I appreciate you all. Thanks for supporting this channel. Please subscribe if you have not done so yet. And and just let me know what you think. All right. You don't have to agree with everything I said. If you have different viewpoints, let me know. Send me a comment. All right. Okay. Thank you so very much, my friends. God bless you all. And I'm going to be back again very soon. Thank you.